Now, because there's this expectation that employees are joining a household, and joining a household for the long term, it is typically the case that the major companies are hiring only people right out of college. You don't see people changing jobs to the extent that you find in the United States. Indeed, in the United States, it's argued that the only way to move up, the only way to get more money, the only way to get higher status is indeed to change your job, to change your corporate status, or to change your employer. Traditionally, in the Japanese case, once you join, you're there forever. You gain obligations, you gain position, you gain status. And if you leave that household, you become an individual, you become an outsider. You become a person who has demonstrated that he is a nail that must be hammered down, and hence other corporations, other employers are not likely to pick you up. So hiring is primarily involves the hiring of young people finishing up college. And April 1st is a traditional first day of work, and so you will come in with a class. It is often called the freshman class. You will come in with a group of people as if you're going off to college. You will come in, you will sing songs, you will be treated as a group in the same way as you might go through freshman orientation at a university. The educational field that you had is less important. It is important that you have some knowledge, some technical knowledge as an engineer, and hence the engineering degree is valued because of what it demonstrates about your knowledge and capabilities. But it is less important that you are a chemical engineer or a mechanical engineer or electrical engineer, unlike, again, the United States, where your field shapes your subsequent career. If you're a chemical engineer, then you're inappropriate for certain kinds of jobs and appropriate only for certain kinds of jobs. As a new hire in a major company, as a recent graduate, you'll be trained. You'll be trained in a lot of different areas. And so you demonstrate some basic knowledge, but the major knowledge that you will use on the job, you gain as a member of this new household.
Once they start working for a company as an engineer, I must ask the question to myself whether they actually regard themselves or identify themselves as an engineer. I'm asking this question because the Japanese typically identify themselves with a group. And therefore, I might argue that they identify themselves as either a salaryman or with their organization or in terms of their rank and division. And I'll go into detail for each of these. A salaryman is a general term for people who are hired by companies and they earn salaries. The word salaryman has sort of a sad tone attached to it because it has the image of men dressed in dark suits, commuting on very crowded, packed trains, taking 1.5 hours each way to travel to work, and they work long, long hours, and then they go out drinking after work with their colleagues, and they rarely spend enough time with their families. And when they talk to each other about their situations, they just look at each other and say sadly, well, we're salarymen, so we can't really help it, can we? So rather than saying I'm an engineer, I think that most likely someone who has an engineering position in a company in Japan would refer to themselves as a salaryman. Corporate employees in Japan wear a corporate badge on their collar, and that becomes part of their identification. As I said, Japanese people typically identify themselves with the organization, and this is exemplified, for instance, in their phone conversation, and how they identify themselves when they call up somebody on the phone. The correct protocol in Japan is when you call up a person, you say, hello, this is so-and-so of so-and-so. For instance, I would say, hello, this is Takeshita of IBM. And if you do not tell the other person where you're from, then they would ask you, well, which Takeshita-san are you? So I felt very, very awkward when I stopped working for IBM and I didn't belong to any organization. I would call somebody up and end up saying, this is Takeshita of some people, if they don't belong to an organization, they might identify themselves with the places they live. For instance, I can call somebody and say, this is Takeshita of Setagaya, Tokyo, and they might know who I am. Now, the third identification is by meishi, which means business card. You may have seen in films or comedies of Japanese people presenting their meishis to each other and bowing and carefully reading the other person's meishi before they put it away. You must treat the meishi as if you treat the other person. So Japanese businessmen are shocked when they go into a meeting with American businessmen who just kind of toss their meishis as if they're throwing frisbees across the table. They're just totally shocked. In any case, your meishi has your rank and division along with your name and company on it. They would look at it, you would look at somebody's meishi very carefully to know who you're in a meeting with and what their ranks are in relationship to you and among themselves, so that you know which person is the key person you're talking to.